Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to one of our virtual events with Hobby Memorial Library. We are so excited to have one of our partners, Workforce Solutions of Central Texas. Mr. Charlie Ayers is here with us, and he is going to be talking to us again about workforce trends and what's happening to the job that year. It's like a very long title. So I'm going to go ahead and let him get started and tell you all about our event. Welcome, Charlie. We're
Well,
glad you're
thank
here.
you. Thank you. It's always good to be with you. Yes, we're going to be discussing and looking at some data regarding some things that are impacting workforce and changes that have happened that are happening that may impact future careers and the way we do work and how we work with one another. I'm going to see if I can share my screen real quick. See, get this set up so y'all can. Hang on, let's go the other way. Somehow we ended up in the middle. There we go. So can you see that okay? Is that coming through? All right, very good. So as I said, we're going to be looking at several things that have impacted not just the workforce, but how we work, how our careers are molded, what direction the world of work may be going. And so we're just going to jump right into it. If there's questions, I'll just make sure that someone just shouts those out to me. We can certainly answer them as we go, and there's time at the end to answer questions also. So just starting off, we'll talk about what happened to my dad's job, because that's a good place, because one of the things that you may have noticed is because of so many changes going on in the economy and with innovation and technology, occupations, job descriptions, everything is changing, and it's changing quickly. For many years, my dad would allow me to go to work with him during the summers. Now, I don't know if you recognize what is on the screen right now, but for those of you that may not know what that is actually called a chase. At this point in our lives, it's almost an ancient piece of equipment, but a chase was used on a letter press, and early on, letter presses were actually used to produce documents. And my dad worked for the University of Texas for 30 years. He actually was a letterpress operator. How this kind of would happen is if you look at that picture, you can see words are certainly typed that's laid on top of this piece of wood or on top of the chase. And actually, this would all begin with a big bar of lead, and the lead would be put into the back of the machine, and it would melt. And on the front side of the machine, it looked very much like a traditional, at this point, an old-fashioned typewriter, what you would may see in a museum, or maybe your grandparents have one in their house, or your parents have one stored in a closet somewhere. But it was a typewriter keyboard on the front side of the machine, and on the back side of the machine, it basically had the equipment to melt lead down into liquid form, and it was called a linotype machine. There would be individuals that sat at these machines all day long, and they would type the text that was needed for a particular book, and the type would literally come out in lines of lead, and hence the name linotype machine. And then an individual would take that type and place it in the order that it was to be read in the chase, a whole page of a book, and then they would lock it into the chase. The chase was rolled over to the press. It was put on the bed of the press, and as you might guess, it basically became a giant-sized rubber stamp at that point. There was an ink roller that would roll across the lead type. There was a sheet of paper that was brought across the type, and then an impression was made, and that was a printed page. And most of the time, they printed like 32-page signatures. And what I mean by that is there were 32 pages to the book, all on one page, front and back. They would take that sheet to the bindery, fold it to where it was in page order, and then stitch it, put a hardcover on it, sew it together, glue it, and they would have a textbook. And this was basically what my father did, is he printed all the textbooks for University Press. He printed final exams, football programs, anything the university needed printing or printed, the printing division took care of that. As you might guess, as a small child, 8 or 9, 10 years old, it was pretty fascinating to go to the printing division during the summer and spend the day there and watch all of this movement and how all these machines work together, and what the end product looked like. It just so happened that one day when I was there with my father, a very large truck pulled up to the dock of the printing division, and they unloaded a crate that took quite a bit of heavy equipment and several employees to unload. And I had asked my dad what was in the crate, and my dad commented to me that that was a new type of press that the printing division had ordered, and it was an offset press. My dad also shared with me, though, that it didn't use any lead type, so he didn't have real positive feelings that it was even going to last or that it would work properly because it could not use lead type. Well, needless to say, the only place you can find a letterpress now is in a museum. We do not use letterpresses in print production anymore. As a matter of fact, other than large web presses like in newspapers and magazines, we don't use a lot of offset presses anymore. Everything has gone digital. My dad ended up having to retire because there was not a need for a letterpressman anymore in the printing division. You've seen this happen with many types of occupations, how because of technology or because of innovation, shifts in the economy, that the jobs have just gone away. Some of you may have even remembered going to the Blockbuster video store and renting a video and taking it home. And we know now that Blockbuster video stores don't exist because we don't actually use videotapes anymore. We stream everything, and we don't even have to go somewhere to rent our entertainment. We can just stream it over our tablet, and now even our televisions have built-in Wi-Fi to them, so we can literally just stream them over our TV and not even have to have a computer or our tablet or some sort of device to do that. So the first thing that I want to bring to your attention is one of the things that we have to be conscious of going forward is keeping our education relevant, because things are happening so fast that what we learn today may be unuseful 3 to 5 years from now. The software may change, the device may change, even the method of how we produce it or get the job done may change. Job titles are changing every day. And so it's really a hard thing to keep education relevant in a world where things are moving so quickly. What I have on the screen for you right now is called a technology adoption map. I'll kind of explain this to you, but what it shows are the technologies that are the significant technologies that have been developed over recent years. Well, not recent years, for quite some time. And it starts with electricity, and we go all the way to the internet. Where you see electricity, the number underneath electricity, that is the year that it was invented. So electricity was invented in 1873. And the number that you see in parentheses, sorry, I got tangled up. I need a drink. Anyway, the number in parentheses next to electricity, that's how many years that it took for 25% of the American population to actually have that technology at their disposal in their home. So in other words, 46 years after electricity was invented, only a quarter of Americans had electricity. So that gives you a sense of how valuable that technology was, but it took forever to become commercialized, even to the majority of the population. So it was many, many years that a lot of Americans still had candlelight and lanterns, even though part of the population had modern electricity, so to speak. As you go down that technology chart, you can see the years that the innovation or the technology was developed, and then you can see in parentheses the number of years that it took for 25% of Americans to have that technology in their hands. One of the things you may notice about this chart is there's two things that are significant about it. Number one, the years get shorter in between the innovations. It doesn't take as long to come up with something new, but also the years that it gets into part of the population, the years that it actually becomes commercialized, they get shorter also. If you look at mobile phones, developed in 1983, it only took 13 years for 25% of Americans to utilize that technology. Now, I will tell you, and probably some of you know this depending on your generation, but in 1983, mobile phones looked like a suitcase. And I mean, you literally like had a satchel that you hauled that thing around in. It was like carrying a brick around. It weighed 5 or 6 pounds. It had literally a real phone receiver on it. It wasn't just a single phone that you could hold up to your ear. It had the full receiver like you're used to seeing in an old payphone, and you would pull that receiver off the satchel or out of the satchel and talk on it, but you're carrying this thing around while you're trying to communicate with your mobile phone. It seems crazy now, but that was really a luxury item in 1983. If you saw someone with a mobile phone or someone carrying a satchel around, they were probably either very rich or they were a drug dealer, one of the two, because not everybody had access to that. And again, took 13 years for 25% of the population to have it, but that time had certainly been shortened compared to technologies like radio and the telephone and television. And then you get to the internet. You may remember in 1991 when Al Gore invented the internet. Does everybody remember when Al Gore invented that? So 1991, the internet became available. It took just 7 years for 25% of the American population to have access to the internet. So not only did that time frame shorten down, but now we see that more people are having access to this innovation in a shorter amount of time as time goes on. The interesting thing is in Bell County, according to the census, 85% of the population has a cell phone. That's kind of incredible when you stop and think about it. It wasn't very long ago, I was actually at the public library in downtown Temple, Texas, a very nice facility. They have a parking facility that's kind of the next level down from the library, so it's not underground, but it's a covered garage, and you have to go up steps to get to the library itself. When I pulled up to the library, there were a couple of police cars there, and so I thought, man, they're really taking the late fees pretty serious here at the library if they're calling cops on people. As I walked up, I asked the officer, was everything okay? And he was like, yes, everything's perfectly fine. He said, the library ladies sometimes just get a little concerned or a little nervous when there's some homeless people hanging around, and we come and help make sure they know where to go, and we try to get them off, the property. And I said, why are the homeless people hanging around the library? And he said, well, because the library has free Wi-Fi, and they can access the Wi-Fi. So as you might guess, my next question was, why are the homeless people trying to access Wi-Fi? And he was like, well, they have cell phones and laptops. And so that day I discovered, well, if the homeless have devices, we probably all have access at that point. So it's pretty interesting how this technology has literally inundated our society and has really changed kind of the way we operate. That's one of the things that we're learning about technologies. It really does have a disruptive effect on how we do our work and how we deliver product and how we deliver services. And this technology map is a good indicator of kind of how those things develop and how quickly they get to market and what an impact that can have in general on how we do our work. So keeping education relevant is really a challenge. In the middle schools today in Central Texas, we're trying to teach and instruct and guide middle school students for jobs that haven't even been invented yet. Because by the time they get out of high school, college, whatever their pursuits are, there's going to be so many new things in that amount of time that we would not have seen or we would not have been prepared for, just because of the way things change. It's interesting kind of how, when you think about it, how streaming came about. I think most people are familiar with Mark Cuban, who is one of our Texas residents. But Mark Cuban, when he started broadcast.com, he started that only because he moved, when he graduated from the University of Indiana and he moved to Texas, he was trying to find out a way that he could listen to University of Indiana basketball games in Texas because he couldn't pick them up on the local radio. And he and a college roommate ended up developing the system of taking an audio radio signal and digitizing it so it could stream across the internet, because his thought process was, we have this internet, you could listen to it anywhere if we could just figure out how to stream it across the internet. And then shortly after that, they figured out, well, if we could do an audio signal, why couldn't we do a video signal? And you may or may not remember, in 1999, Yahoo purchased broadcast.com from Mark Cuban for $5.7 billion. And that technology was developed. And now, just like we're having this workshop today, we do so many things streaming video and audio that it's just second nature to us now. We don't even think about the fact of that technology has been around just since 1999 or 1995. It's just moved that quickly. So a lot of changes, and it's really hard to make sure that our training and that our knowledge skill sets keep up with that innovation. Many of you could be students at Central Texas College. One of the things that I'll tell you is, for years and years and years, we often thought, if we get our high school diploma, go to college, get our a degree or certificate or whatever we're wanting to do, then we're set and we're ready to go for our career. The thing that has probably changed the most in the last few years is learning is a lifelong process now. It doesn't stop when you walk across the stage. That's really just the beginning. And it used to be that was like kind of our goal. If we could just get there, then we were good. But now, as soon as you walk across the stage, in a year's time, you're having to relearn some things or learn something new that you didn't even delve into when you were in school. So keeping education relevant is important. Another thing is the world is getting older. Pretty significant how this impacts the workforce. The baby boomers are the second largest generation born in the United States. All the baby boomers are turning 65 years old. And the chart that I have for you on the screen shows you more developed regions, which is basically the United States, Canada, Europe, and then you see Africa, Asia, Latin America. The dark blue bar shows you the percentage of the population in 2025 of those regions that will be 65 years old or older. So in the more developed regions, North America, Europe, 21% of the population will be 65 years old or older. Why is that significant? Well, we all know that 65 years of age is when we can, like, go to the house. We can officially retire and start getting our retirement check. And what happens is, or what we're seeing happening even now in Bell County especially, is as those baby boomers reach retirement age, they're checking out of the workforce, and that's a wealth of knowledge and experience that we're losing out of the workforce. But you can see that many areas in the world, there's double digits in that percentage of population of people that are going to be moving into retirement, moving out of the workforce, and to some degree it's like a brain drain because there's so much experience. Those folks that have been working 25, 30 years that have developed that experience are now moving on to another chapter of their lives. The good news is for you, if you're listening to this presentation and you're a student or you're about to graduate soon, a lot of jobs are opening up. So there's a lot of opportunity for individuals that are just coming out of school, or maybe you have gone through some retraining. You wanted to reset, you wanted to upskill, you wanted to try a different career. So many opportunities in Bell County and in Central Texas for that. Um, and actually, currently there are more jobs than there are people to do the jobs. Really good opportunity. It's a really good time to be looking at a new career or stepping out of school into a career. And some of that has to do with the fact that the baby boomers are moving out of the workforce. And you've seen that impact our workforce participation rates, even in our area. The other thing, here's the other big impact, the end of the majority. This is pretty significant, and it's because one of the reasons is it involves the largest generation ever born in the United States, and that's the millennials. But the millennials were not only the largest generation born in the United States, they were the most diverse generation ever born in the United States. What that means is it's kind of detailed for you graphically on this map. The dark blue areas, you see Texas, Florida, Georgia, California, Nevada. You see all those dark blue states, and I think there's a Virginia up there. It's behind a box on my screen. But the dark blue states, what that is showing you is more than 50% of the millennial population are minorities. So, one more time, more than 50% of the millennial population in those states are minorities. That's why I call it the end of the majority. So what's happening is in our workplaces, it's becoming much more of a melting pot. You're beginning to interact more with people from different cultures, people from different ethnicities, races, religions, and even just social status. That's one of the things that is going to be changing more and more. You're going to see that there's going to be a lot more diversity. As a matter of fact, most companies now have a director of diversity for their system. They outreach to the community, but they also are there for the corporate atmosphere and the corporate image. And that's the reason, because our workplaces are becoming much more diverse. And the individuals that you may be on a team with, that you may work directly with, may be vastly different than you are. The reason why that's significant, and this is not a political or religious statement, I'm just going to tell you what I've only noticed in my own life. If you have people in your life that are different from you, it makes you a stronger person. If you're able to experience people that are not made from the same cookie cutter that you are, you get a broader perspective on a global view. You get some wisdom that you wouldn't have not necessarily gotten otherwise. And I say that because it's really hard for us. Our human nature is, our friends look like us, they believe the things we do, they like the same things we like, they go the same places we go. So it's hard to kind of break that shell a little bit. But as we go forward, one of the things that we're going to see that will impact how we do business and the workplace is this change in diversity and how these individuals impact our own lives, because they may have different ethical backgrounds, or they came from a different culture. And we're going to find out that not everyone grew up on our street in our neighborhood just like us. And I do think that's a positive, but it's still something that has an impact on moving forward. So the end of the majority is something else that we see that's really changing how we do work and our workplace. So I'll give you a minute to look at all these companies. There's one thing that all these companies have in common. And if you want to take a guess, I think you could respond in the chat, but I'll just give you a minute. Can you figure out what all of these companies have in common?
Logos?
They all have really great logos. Yeah, and that is a correct answer. You got a correct answer. There's a magic answer, but yes, they all have logos. They're all international companies. They all are very well-to-do companies. They make a great deal of money. But the one thing all these companies have in common is all of these companies were started by people who were not born in America. All of these companies were started by immigrants. So that's the other significant thing that I want you to think about going forward. We see a lot on the news about Texas southern border and how we're dealing with that or how we're not dealing with that, but it's always very dramatic. I want you to know that the immigration issue is an issue that we're going to have to figure out as a country, because we need to figure out how are we able to integrate those gifted, talented, innovative individuals that want to start a life in America and bring them into our society. I think probably all of us, even if you're listening outside the area today, I think probably all of us would agree none of us are for letting human traffickers be part of our country. I think we all kind of like, yeah, you know, I know you got to make a living, but you don't need to make a living that way. We're not for human trafficking. I think most of us would agree we're not for drug dealers. However, there are those individuals that are foreign born that want to be a part of the American economy, and it's primarily because of the freedom of ideas in the United States. It is still the country, in spite of all of our problems, we are still the country that promotes innovation, has freedom of thought, has the ability to exchange ideas. It has investment, entrepreneurship. Those individuals in those countries that have good ideas, we need to figure out how do they become part of our society and our economy to help America continue to grow and be innovative. This chart that I have up on the screen, these are American citizens that were foreign born. So these are the American citizens, the foreign-born population by their place of origin. And the last numbers we have are 2018. But you can see 30% of them are from Asia. Mexico, there's 27%. Other Latin America, 30%. Europe's 10%. Other is really just a bunch of small countries lumped together. It's places like Germany and Sweden, and some of those. There just wasn't enough to create its own category. But you can tell there are significant amounts of our population that are for other countries. You know, it's interesting when you think about it. I just read an article the other day about Steve Jobs' father. And Steve Jobs' father was from Syria. And he moved to the United States or migrated to the United States before Steve Jobs was born. And I often thought to myself, what would the world look like if Steve Jobs had been born in Syria instead of the United States? Because Syria's maybe not the most innovative, certainly entrepreneurial country that you could think of, but sometimes it's about being right place, right time. And America allows our free market, most of our government, we still allow for that innovative spirit and that opportunity to grow. But the whole immigration issue is something we need to figure out and get that right. So it's just not a build a wall, everybody has to stay out. And I will tell you, I think we all can agree too, walls are important. Borders are important. That's why I have a door on my bedroom. Sometimes you need to keep people's stuff out of your business. But at the same time, I think we can find a way to welcome the individuals that we know can contribute to what we're doing, and certainly make them a part of what's going on. We've seen the companies that I've shown you, we've seen the past history of what immigrants can do, the innovative spirit that they have, and how they can certainly contribute to the growth of our nation. So there is a global workforce crisis. That's the other thing that's changing things dramatically. This chart is just listing the countries and their labor participation rate. I wanted to show this to you because it is a global problem. It's just not a Bell County or Central Texas problem per se. Even though in Bell County, the last 5 years, we've lost about 3% of our labor participation rate. As I said, a lot of that is the baby boomers had been such a large part of that labor force, and they're slowly moving out of the labor force. There's many different reasons why the labor participation rate may be a little bit lower. But that is significant. And as you can see across the world, a lot of these countries have lost 1 to 2% in the last few years. Some of them have done, break even. Some of them done a little well. But the United States, it mirrors our region. We pretty much 2%, 2% less participation in the labor force. But I would want to leave with you, when you see this, usually when I speak to people and they get a little bit hyper about automation or robotics, and they're like, oh my God, they're going to replace all of our jobs, and we're going to be overrun by robots. It's kind of like, no, because actually automation and robotics and the technology is actually going to help fill in the gaps of those jobs that are either too dangerous for humans, or we don't have enough humans to do the job. There's going to be room for that, and many times you're seeing robotics become very useful in manufacturing processes, like processes where it's very redundant and very, the same kind of manipulation every day, all day long, where it would be hard to find humans to do that, or maybe it would not even be healthy for humans to do that. Robotics are being able to fill in those gaps. So global workforce crisis is a real thing, and it is impacting the labor market. On the screen now, and I know you won't be able to see all that, but this is from the most recent 2020 census. These are all the counties in the United States. And really what I want you to focus on and pay attention to is what you see that's red. Those are the counties that lost population. And what you see that is blue are the counties that gained population. So you can see Texas, Florida, and even up northwest. Those are the areas of the country that tend to be growing. And if you look at New York and the New England area, and certainly California and the Midwest, a lot of red in those areas. There are all kinds of reasons why people decide to move to different parts of the country. But this is another reason why there's kind of becoming workforce shortages in some areas. Not to mention we're having less kids than we used to have. So that has impacted since the 70s. But the most interesting thing is how you can see the areas of growth and the areas that have either just been kind of stagnant or they've lost population. As I mentioned, there are all kinds of reasons why people choose to leave an area. Certainly it has to do with opportunity. It may be just cost of living or job opportunity. Texas is still probably one of the more progressive states in regards to businesses and doing business. There's less tax burden on companies in Texas, and that attributes to a lot of our growth. If you've been down SH 130 lately, you may have driven by the Tesla facility that's being built to manufacture the Tesla trucks. That facility was supposed to be built in San Jose, California, and because of some of the regulations, because of some of the taxes, just the business environment, Elon Musk decided that maybe Texas was the place to make that investment and build that next factory. So it does have an effect on that. You see a lot of growth in Florida too. They have a lot of blue there. What's interesting is if you look at the state of Texas, you can almost see 3 blue clusters like San Antonio, Dallas, Houston. When I've shared with y'all in the past, we talked about this a little bit, but that really kind of shows it on that map, because if you took a line and drew it to Dallas, then to Houston, then back to San Antonio, back to Dallas, it creates a triangle. That's known as the Texas Triangle, and it's about the 11th largest economic corridor in the United States. The interesting thing about the triangle is 85% of our population lives in the Texas Triangle. So you can see all the blue just clustered up right there and why that's significant. it also makes it significant that it just so happens where we're broadcasting from and talking to y'all from in the Killeen Temple metro area. The Killeen Temple metro area is right in the middle of the triangle. It's 2 hours from Dallas and 2 hours from San Antonio and 2 hours from Houston. So we see a lot of that growth here, especially because of the intersect of Interstate 14 and Interstate 35. It keeps a lot of things going in our area. But you can see how the population has been impacted since our last census in 2010 and where some of these people have moved. So workforce, as far as a population standpoint, getting older, getting more diverse. Also, they're looking to be mobile. They can be very mobile. They can move to different spots depending on the opportunities. So all of these things are playing into the changes that we see going on. This is our specific labor force breakdown just in Central Texas. Well, I say just in Central Texas. It's actually Texas, but it can show you what's going on in the Texas, and you see not those that aren't in the labor force that are 16 plus. We actually count 16 to 65-year-olds as the labor force. So it's showing you the number of those that are 16 and above that are not in the labor force, what the labor force is, those that are unemployed. And so you can see that we have that vast percentage difference in those that are working age and those that are actually working. Again, I said there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of those have just retired early, or they're just involved in other opportunities. Some of those are young families that have decided to start a family, so one of the spouses is tending to raising children and not in the workforce. A lot of different reasons for that. But you see at the top of the chart, 20% of Texas residents possess a bachelor's degree. The national average is about 24%. So we're a little bit low, but I will also tell you, if you're not familiar with it, Texas A&M Central Texas is our four-year public college. It's still, in regards to educational institutions, it hasn't been around that long. And so we're already seeing those numbers change a little bit. And with their partnership with Central Texas College, I think we'll see that number continue to grow because we finally have those opportunities here in our own metro area. And then you can see 7.5% hold an associate's degree. The national average is about 8%. So we're right there on track with what the nation's doing. That's a special shout out to Central Texas College for getting the job done. They're getting those associate degrees out the door. So that's a good thing. So this slide is showing you the targeted occupations in Central Texas. And what I mean by targeted occupations, these are the fastest growing jobs with the highest wages currently. You can look at this and see there's a lot of these jobs that are just certifications. As a matter of fact, there are many of these jobs listed on here that you can actually get training for at Central Texas College. But in Central Texas, or Bell County, I should say, is what I'm about to cite for you. The cost of living, in order to have a living wage in Bell County, you have to make $12.75 an hour if you're a single adult. That's the living wage in Bell County. Anything underneath that, you're going the wrong way. That's going toward poverty. So obviously minimum wage at $7.25 was never intended to really support one working adult in a career. It may be a starter job, it may be a part-time job, but I will also tell you the way the economy has gone. I actually was speaking at Texas A&M in College Station a couple of weeks ago doing a presentation much like this on labor market, and I had a gentleman ask me if I thought that the minimum wage should be raised from $7.25. And I informed him that right now in our economy, especially in Central Texas, no one makes $7.25 an hour. Chick-fil-A is paying $15 an hour plus a $500 signing bonus with a 401k plan. If you're paying $7.25 an hour, you're not finding very many employees because the workers have a lot of really good options out there right now. But most of these jobs require some kind of certification, but you can see all of these jobs are well above what we would consider a living wage. Certainly, I mean these are very well paid jobs for our area. So I just wanted you to see that in case you were on a career track now. You may be involved in a health science program. You may be involved in one of our trades. But if you take a look at these are the ones that are really hiring. There's openings. They're needing, for example, when we talk about nurses, we literally can't train enough nurses for our medical centers to hire. I mean, that's how many they need. And it doesn't matter if CTC had multiple nursing classes and UMHB had multiple nursing. I mean, there's literally more than we can train in 1 year. So pretty significant job growth in our area and a lot of great opportunity for folks that are looking for those careers. Okay, so wrapping it up, I hope I haven't gone over time, have I? I've just been rambling. Okay, good. Because just in case there's questions, I want to make sure you're familiar with workintexas.com, because when we talk about pursuing jobs and how things are changing in the workplace, workintexas.com is the largest job board in the state of Texas. It is the job board that we utilize in our career centers. For those of you that are listening in Central Texas, we have 4 career centers for Workforce Solutions. There's one in Lampasas, one in Killeen, one in Temple, and one in Rockdale. You can access those career centers. They have computer labs in those centers. If you need a place to work on your resume and to brush up, there's even staff in those centers that can help guide you into what keywords and kind of how you need to compose that resume to land that job. We also have workshops that you can attend. We also have workshops on our website, but workintexas.com is the tool that you can use. Go register, and you can search jobs in any county in the state of Texas, and you can research any occupation in the state of Texas. But particularly in our area, if you want to look by industry, it'll allow you to do a keyword search, and you can search by industry. You can search by education if you have a bachelor's degree, or maybe you have an associate's degree and you just want to find jobs that are their requirement is associate's degree. You can search by that. And so it's a great tool that I just wanted you to be aware of so you could utilize it. But if you need help or you need some guidance with it, please go to a career center and talk to one of the career center specialists, and they can help you navigate that. So hang on, how did I do that?
Are you trying to unshare? Oh,
there. No. So that was the last slide, and I know I threw a lot of information out there with a lot of demographics, a lot of data, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any at this point.
okay. Do you have any, there any questions, Alyssa? No questions right now. I have a couple of questions.
Perfect.
Yeah, you talked about automation, and you talked about how, definitely like factory work and stuff like that, but everyone has technology now. Librarians are technical now. The young men and women who, work in drive-throughs, or not, I say young, everybody, the Walmart pickup, they all are using technology. So would you safely, would you say that it's safe to say that our world has become where we really need computer skills, uh online skills for practically everything at this point?
Absolutely. I will tell you the number one thing that employers share with me, and obviously we have a vast network of employers since we work with them. The thing that they share with me, even above, looking for bachelor's degrees or anything, they said if people would just learn how to use Excel and they could create an Excel spreadsheet, that's the most valuable tool that they look for. And as you might imagine, there's still some of that baby boomer workforce that were not necessarily raised on computers, and so they've had to try to, as we said, make their education relevant and learn how to transition from a traditional ledger to a digital spreadsheet. But that's one of those things too, is that a good rule of thumb for you to have is to have a, you don't have to be an expert, you don't necessarily have to have a certification, but be fluid at least in Microsoft Office, for example. Know how to develop a spreadsheet, create formulas, do sum total, that kind of thing, and be familiar with PowerPoint, because more times than not in the business world, it's about communication and about being able to present your ideas. So even technology to that lowest level, something that we think, well, I use that every day, many times that is just an expectation by employers when you're stepping into a career that you need to have that stuff. I will tell you, one of the fastest growing areas in our region as far as occupation, knowledge, and skill set, and it touches every single industry, and that's cybersecurity. And we're finding that cybersecurity skills are being looked for, whether it's a medical center or whether it's actually like an IT, like a computer company. Everybody needs cybersecurity specialists and skill sets in their organization, because it's just becoming such a critical thing, because so much of our work is moving to a digital platform. We're now figuring out, oh, hang on a second, I got to figure out how to protect that information. Even your Ring doorbell at your house is recording information, and there has to be some kind of stopgap or some kind of secure way of guarding that, even that information that's regarded. So with us becoming more digital, you're exactly right. Computer skills, I would equate it with years ago when everybody, in high school, you were almost required to take a typing class because you had to know how to type.
Right.
Certainly you have to type on a computer, but I've seen people type pretty good with two thumbs on their phone. They're pretty good at that. But you do need to put as much work as you can into your computer skills, your technology skills.
Well, and another question that I have is, you started off your presentation with showing us the equipment that your father used. Um, yes, we've become computer, and we can do something very quickly with a computer. Even craftsmen who
Mm-hmm.
are going to, build a table, and they want to do it, you know, with all their creativity. They can still use uh, certain tools that may calculate something or whatever. Do you feel that because we are moving more computer oriented, that we may somehow be losing um, the creativity of hands-on basic tradesmanship?
There's still many of those trades that are always going to require that. Um, I would call it, many years ago, we refer to it now as career and technical education, and not many years ago we called it industrial arts. And I believe there's still art in manufacturing and industry, and some, like you referred to, some of the trades. You're still going to need some of that. I think we'll continue to find tools that will help with that, but it may be that now that artistry transfers to how we solve problems with the tools rather than how did we solve problems with our hands. I think there's still going to be room for both. I will tell you, not long ago I was doing a presentation, and it happened to be in the banquet hall of a local restaurant. So they didn't have any of the audio visual equipment in the restaurant. So I just had to kind of stand up and talk. Well, I had my iPad with me, and I had just placed my PowerPoint on my iPad to use as a reference, like I was going through slides, but no one could see it but myself. When I got through with the presentation, one of the folks on the front row raised their hand and said, "I have a question." They said, "So is that an iPad that you're holding?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, it is." And she said, "So what do you do? What do you do with that?" And I said, "Well, I use it for several things." I said, "Like for today, I have my notes on here, and I'm just using it as a reference so I can make sure I cover everything in the presentation." And she said, "Well, do you read books on that?" And I just kind of laughed. And I said, "Yes, I have a couple of books downloaded on here that I read from time to time." And she said, "Don't you think it's a shame that we're raising a generation of kids that will never know what it's like to hold a real book in their hand?"
Hmm.
And I looked at her for a minute and I said, "When was the last time you sent a telegraph?" And she said, "Well,
Yes.
that's silly. We don't do that anymore." And I said,
Right.
"Yeah, it's not bad. It's just different. It's not bad. It's just different." And what we have found out now is none of us, even with the digital world, have gone in and like cleaned out our bookshelves and thrown them all away. We still use books, and sometimes we'll use a computer. It kind of depends on our situation. I'm one of those that if I get an email, I certainly can read it on my computer, but if I'm sitting down like with a fictional or non-fictional book that requires some time and effort, I like sitting and holding it and turning the pages and looking at the book. It's not because I can't work the computer. That's just my preference. And I think we'll find that going forward, that many times there's going to be a mix of that. And there will be times when we know that the technology is necessary to make it more productive or make it simpler. But then there's other times, like you said, that even a robot is not going to have the sophistication to make that adjustment, and it's going to take a human hand with an eye to really kind of see to make that adjustment. So I think you're going to continue to see a blend of both. That's why I don't get too concerned about robots taking over the world. I mean, you think about something even just like filling an envelope or tying a shoe. Those things are more complex than we think because we do them every day. But try to get a machine to tie a shoe. That's a lot of mathematical equations to get that to happen. So
Well,
that's kind of how
well,
I feel.
and technology has brought this world in places that we never, ever thought we'd be. And, so it's really cool that we just keep going. I mean, I look at video games, and the very
Yeah,
first video games that if you managed to get the guy to bounce up and down, you were doing good. And today's video games, or basically you're watching something that looks 3D real, and it's like, whoa, this has happened. So yeah, i I kind of see the evolution of technology is taking us to places that we never thought we could go. But we can be creative and have our really cool unique things we do, but we can do them on such an amazing bigger scale. So yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. There is still a vast amount of difference between digitally created art with Photoshop and a hand painted oil painting. I mean, there's just different values there, and there's a different perception of it. And most of us, now I know it's not for everyone, but most of us would rather get our acrylics out or our oils out and go through the process of creating something other than just downloading images and putting them on and then printing that out and calling that, here's my painting.
however, as an artist, it's so much easier to clean up.
Yes, it is. It doesn't get all over everything, and it's
You don't
certainly
have
easier.
paintbrush mess everywhere.
Exactly, and it's certainly easier to fix if you mess something up.
Yes,
So,
yes,
but
yes.
but yeah, it's really much a place for there's a place for both, and I think we become very successful when we learn how to utilize both aspects of that. I think years and years ago, Canon came out with these wonderful cameras, and their slogan was like one of the best slogans ever, because Canon's slogan was, "It's so advanced, it's simple." And really, that's what technology should do. It doesn't always necessarily do the job for us, but if it makes it a better way to do it, then we certainly can utilize it. But there's still going to be men and women that need that artistic ability and artistic eye to make things work the way they should, because automation just will not be able to do that.
Right. Well, I do have to admit, trying to draw a giraffe that's walking around as opposed to looking at a picture of a giraffe and starting from there is so much easier.
Exactly, exactly.
You can just Google a giraffe. You don't need one in your backyard. So, well, Charlie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for visiting with us today. You always bring us really great information about what's going on in the workforce. And we really appreciate you taking your time to bring us all this information and all these statistics. It's always mind boggling what you show. So we really appreciate that. And before we go, oh, and if you've not gotten that information that we Charlie has on his screen, and Charlie, you we'll put all that in the comments section. But if you have any questions or whatever, Charlie gave us the information, and definitely bug him. He's easy to find. I said that, and it's like you're never in your office right now. No, I'm kidding. You are. You are. Before we go, though, guys, I want to remind you that the library's going to be open this Sunday, but then we will be closed all the way through to the following Sunday, and we'll be back open in the library March 21st, Monday. But remember, the library works 365 days. So if you have a library in question, or you need us to look at your paper to edit it, give you some suggestions, go to our library website and you can get in touch with the librarian every single day, because we take turns being on call and we are here for you. And then that very first Monday we come back, we're doing another environmental event, Saving the Environment. That's going to be March 21st at noon. And then the following Monday, we have Dr. Temple, who is going to be talking to you guys about, y'all are worried about climate change, you worried about environment, you worried about saving the penguins, you worried about all this. Well, she's going to tell you how you can contact your legislators to get some of this done instead of just sitting complaining about it. So we're going to have that on the 28th. And then we have our Warren Hart astronomer. He's going to be back on March 30th to do another night sky tour. So we are just continuing on our events. Remember, if you have any ideas for events, please let us know. You can put that in the email reference requests at ctc.edu, because we're already getting stuff lined up for the fall. So thank you again, Charlie. And you
Thank
guys,
you.
y'all have a great day with us today. Okay. All right. Charlie, thank you again. And